to be prepared for the next pandemic. We were not prepared for COVID-19, so we need to do better. And we need to be committed to make sure all tools get out to everyone in the world. China's expertise and resources and manufacturing capacities will help us meet those needs.
You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Droid DNA augmentation initiated. Vision expanding to a 5-inch 1080p HD display and camera. Touch acquiring NFC. Hearing evolving with Beats audio. Wireless charging activated.
Introducing Droid DNA by HTC. It's not an upgrade to your phone, it's an upgrade to yourself.
Why are they trying to get the mRNA into every single thing? Every person, every piece of food, all your beef, your chicken, they're trying to put it in everything, okay? And it's all becoming clear now. Here's the best 4 minutes you'll spend on the internet today.
How does it differ from DNA?
Okay, DNA, that's a very good question. DNA is just an abbreviation for a much longer name. Deoxyribonucleic acid. That's what DNA stands for. Now, deoxy, see, that's a Latin root. If you trace its meaning, it means God. So deoxyribo. In the Semitic languages, ribo is the same as rabbi. Or in Arabic, we say Rab. It means the master, the Lord. So here we have deoxyribo, God, Lord, and master, nucleic acid. Nucleic means at the center, and acid is like chemical fire. So deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. What does it mean? God, Lord and master. The fire at the center of my being. So what does the Bible say about it? It says, in the beginning was the Word. And the Word was what? The Word was God. And the Word was with God. Then it says, after many days, the Word became flesh and dwelt among men. Well, see, that's DNA. So now, the DNA basically is the God molecule that actually is the blueprint for how to make a human being. Every molecule, every protein, every substance in your body was coded for, programmed for, in the DNA. But how did it get expressed? As a protein, say in muscle or bone. How did that get expressed physically? Out of a word. How did it manifest into flesh? That's the messenger RNA. See, the mRNA, the small case M stands for messenger. So it's almost theological. If DNA is the God molecule, well, how does God communicate with the world? He sends messengers, prophets, teachers, with a message. So in the cell of a body, okay, suppose some injury took place. So, suppose you cut your skin, like I got a little thing here. Okay, so a message went to the cell from the DNA. Oh, there was a protein that got destroyed in some cell. We need 300 of those units to replace what got destroyed. So the messenger RNA comes out with that message to code for that protein. And then the cell gets busy and makes 300 copies of that exact protein, fixes whatever the injury was. We call that healing. We take it for granted. But how did it happen? The DNA was in charge and gave a command to the messenger RNA to go make a protein. It's creation taking place in every minute, every second. Why? Because it's God that's at the very center of our being. So what does the enemy to God and the righteous want to do? He wants to send in an alien word, an alien messenger RNA. Not the word of God coming from the divine, but coming from the outside, literally coming from Bill Gates. So what kind of message does Bill Gates want to send into your cells? 2 or 3 generational genocidalists, eugenicists. He's hated black people, even his father, his grandfather. They all believed in eugenics, population reduction, but they didn't have the means to carry it out. And so now here's little Billy. He's got the means in his hands to actually carry out the depopulation agenda of his father and his grandfather.
Your DNA is a right-handed double helix made up of these 4 things right here. And the helix is held together by sulfuric bonds that appear after every 10 pairs of nucleotides, every 5 pairs of nucleotides, every 6 pairs of nucleotides, and again, every 5 pairs of nucleotides. 10-5-6-5, 10-5-6-5, or in the Hebrew alphabet, Yod He Vav He, the signature of your creator, the signature of an artist under his painting, if you will. Now, the magic potion, if you actually read the patents, it is adding a triple helix, and is adding more of this, which comes from a meteorite or a fallen star. And this 10-5-6-5, Yod He Vav He, the signature of your creator, quickly turns into 10-5-6-6-6-5. Do I have your attention yet?
Droid DNA augmentation initiated. Neural speeds increasing to 4G LTE. Brain upgrading to a quad-core processor. Predictive intelligence with Google Now complete.
Introducing Droid DNA by HTC. It's not an upgrade to your phone, it's an upgrade to yourself.
On the left over here, we have individuals who are religious fundamentalists, religious fanatics, and this is the expression, RT-PCR, real-time PCR expression of the VMAT2 gene. Over here, we have individuals. So let me complete. So over here, we have individuals who are not particularly fundamentalist, not particularly religious, and you can see there's a much reduced expression of this particular gene, the VMAT2 gene. Another evidence that supports our hypothesis for the development of this approach.
What you see here is by spreading this virus, we're going to eliminate individuals from donning on a bomb vest and going into a market and blowing up the market.
So our hypothesis is that these are fanatical people, that they have overexpression of the VMAT2 gene, and that by vaccinating them against this, we'll eliminate this behavior. So we have some very, very remarkable data in this next slide. Here we have two brain scans. These are fMRIs These are two different individuals with different levels of expression of VMAT2. On top is an individual who's a religious fanatic, an individual, and we've repeated this numerous times, that has high levels of VMAT2. Now, this individual down here who had low levels of the VMAT2 gene, this individual would self-describe as not particularly religious. In each case, these individuals were read a religious text. This individual lit up the right middle frontal gyrus, shown here, and that's a part of the brain that's associated with theory of mind. It's a part of the brain that has to do with intents and beliefs and desires. In marked contrast, here's an individual who would not particularly self-describe as religious, and when they're read a religious text, what you see is that this part of the brain called the anterior insula lights up. This is a part of the brain that's associated with disgust or displeasure on hearing something.
So you're suggesting I take a CT scan with me when I'm evaluating people to determine whether I put a bullet in their head?
So the data that I'm presenting here supports the concept that we're proposing, and I think that we would not propose to do CT scans or fMRIs on individuals out in the hinterlands of Afghanistan. The virus would immunize against this VMAT2 gene, and that would have the effect that you see here, which is it's essentially to turn a fanatic into a normal person. And we think that will have major effects in the Middle East.
How would you suggest that this is going to be dispersed? Aerosol?
Well, so the present plan and the tests that we've done so far have used respiratory viruses such as flu or rhinoviruses, and we believe that that's a satisfactory way to get the exposure of the largest part of the population. Most of us, of course, have been exposed to both of those viruses, and we're quite confident that this will be a very successful approach.
This is fascinating. What's the name of this proposal?
Yeah, so the name of this project is FunVax, which is the vaccine for religious fundamentalism.
And you have a proposal already?
The proposal has just been submitted, and I think that the data that I have shown you today would support the development of this project, and we think it has great promise.
What is that? It is a Hebrew text that has only been translated a couple of times of a couple of authors into English. It's so mysterious, George, that very few scholars even want to talk about it because they don't know what to say about it. It's a brief text. It's only about 2,000 lines. All right. And it is written as if an observer were present the day that the Creator created humankind, step by step. Huh. However, it's written in a language that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Is it like today. Genesis or totally different?
It's very different from Genesis. I think Genesis probably partially derived from this text, the Sefer Yetzirah, which is the book of creation. It literally translates to the book of creation. So it was as if someone were watching the Creator actually create the first person.
Doing what he did,
but it is not written scientifically. The bottom line to what the text is saying is that through language, humankind was created. And that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Explain that.
If you take it literally. But as I began to follow the instructions as the author created them in this text, and this, George, this is the power of transcending the boundaries between science and spirituality. Because if a scientist only looked at the elements of life, you'd never make this discovery. If you only look at the spiritual text, you would never make this discovery. But it's by blending the two together and allowing them to tell the story. So we today in modern science, we talk about life as the result of elements, and we describe elements through word and through number. So we have the periodic table, for example, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon makes up the DNA of our bodies. Those are the words, and for every one of those words, there are a lot of numbers that may be applied. There are 17 different numeric parameters that go with each of those. So put that aside, when you go back into the ancient text and the Sefer Yetzirah specifically, they did exactly the same thing. They talked about the power of the letters of very specific alphabets Now, it doesn't make a lot of sense to modern scholars until we begin to understand that every ancient alphabet, bar none, that I have found so far, has always, from day one, with each letter, had a number, a mysterious number associated with the letters. We don't know where the numbers came from. They never change. It's a unique numeric code. The study of that code is called gematria, and it was actually formalized. The laws, 32 laws of gematria, were formed in the 2nd century. They were formalized in the 2nd century. And the only way gematria works is you cannot deviate from these laws. There are specific laws that apply to the numbers. So our ancestors were also talking about life using words and numbers. So they have the letters of the alphabets and this mysterious number. We're using the periodic table. We got a whole bunch of numbers.
Right.
My job was to find out which of those numbers equates to the numbers in the ancient alphabets. And if I could do that, my thinking was it would be possible to look at human DNA, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, and different combinations of that, and substitute the ancient letters for the numbers based upon this correlation. This, in retrospect, it was simple, but not knowing that, it took years. It took me 12 years.
And did you break it?
To find what we now know is that the atomic mass of the elements, the numbers of the atomic mass, are the numbers that equate to the mysterious letters in the ancient alphabets. What that means is when you look at human DNA, or the DNA of any life, it is made of hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and using gematria, the numbers that equate to those become 1, 5, 6, and 3. 3 is with the carbon. And when you then take a table, one of the ancient tables, and you're able to correlate those numbers with the letters, what we find, George, is that the human DNA our genome is built in layers. And at the top layers, it's like every book has an introduction. The introduction in every cell of every form of life, carbon-based DNA, the introduction is the same. And the first translation literally reads, God eternal within the body. God eternal within the body. And God that is depicted in the DNA is actually spelled the way that the name of God was spelled in the ancient text before it was removed 6,800 times. In the Torah, for example, the sacred name of God is believed to be so sacred it cannot be written in its entirety.
Why put it in a code?
You know, this was, so first as a scientist, what I have to say is this. People say, why is the code there? Yeah. And I say, I don't know. All I know is that when I followed the instructions in a 3,000-year-old text and I applied it to the periodic table, this is what we have. Yeah. Next question, is it a coincidence? So
there are no coincidences.
I had a statistician run the numbers for me, and the odds of this happening by chance are 1 to 234,256. Yeah. 234,256 to 1 are the odd, or 0.00041%.
Right.
Those are the odds that it's just random. Just random. Now, those aren't astronomical odds. I thought it might be like 1 to a bajillion, you know. But when you take into account,
they're still high.
Not only is the language there, but when you take into account what the words say, that those words actually have meaning, God eternal within the body.
And they all say that.
The first letter in all human DNA, if you can look at what's called the genetic code, CTAG, every one of those is made up of combinations of carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, right. And they are arranged, I don't want to be really technical when I talk about this, but they're arranged different numbers of carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen atoms. So within each of the DNA bases that make our DNA as it is, there are different combinations of CTAG that break down to different combinations of God eternal within the body. And the God within our cells, within our DNA, is literally the same spelling of the God that was taken from those texts. Now here's the beauty, I just have to say this. All right. My first fear was I found it in the Hebrew language, and I said, does that mean, could it actually be divisive if it only is found in one language? And when the research went to its fruition, what we found is it is in Hebrew and Aramaic and Sanskrit, 3 of the root languages.
The same thing.
Exactly the same thing. So in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Sanskrit, the code for those letters translates precisely the same in the human DNA. That's the first layer.
Nice car.
Sure is.
Make a deal with me, kid. You can have the car and everything that goes along with it.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man with will and taste. Give me smile, kid. Give me smile. I've been around for a long year. Stole many a man's soul to faith. Pleased to meet you. Hope you get my name. Oh yeah. But what's puzzling you is the nature of my name. Ah yeah. Get down in it.
So what do you say?
Thanks. But I think I got this.
This September, set your soul free. The seductive CLA, starting under $30,000 from Mercedes-Benz.
Grandma Pearl and Grandpa Roy?
Yes.
Had 4 children.
Yes.
So here's a picture of the 4 siblings with Grandma Pearl.
Yes. So she watched all of her children die.
You can't see it in their eyes. Back then, they didn't know about the cruel genetic destiny that awaited them.
The 3 brothers were hospitalized and the sister committed suicide.
Yes.
In Niagara-on-the-Lake, Vicky Poirier and her daughter Tam know all about the shadows that darken their family story, the tremors,
His gait was very pronounced.
the depression, and death.
He was hospitalized.
It wasn't until Uncle Max was officially diagnosed that the family learned about the fault running through their genes, the 50-50 chance of inheriting the mutation that causes Huntington's disease.
Once that came to light, then a lot more things made sense in the family. There's you.
Now in her early 60s, Vicky Poirier has Huntington's too.
This is my grandmother and my grandfather. And it turns out that the Huntington's gene came from him.
The previous generations...
What about Vicky's daughter, Tam? The question hangs in the air. There is no cure for Huntington's. Tam has decided not to get the genetic test.
My take on it is that if there was a treatment, I would definitely get tested so that I could get treatment. Since there's not right now, I just don't want to know that I have it. I just want to, live my life normally and not worry the next time I drop my keys if, symptoms are starting. So you just go on with life. Like, what else are you going to do?
Cure it. Sounds like what you're trying to do.
Yeah. So then you go to the lab every day and work on trying to find a treatment.
Tam is fighting back against the Huntington's curse with science. At a lab at McMaster University in Hamilton, she spends her days searching for a way to repair the Huntington's mutation. Joining scientists around the world who are probing the depths of the human genome, looking for ways to fix genetic disease. And there's a buzz in the air these days as lab after lab begins to experiment with a new way to edit genes. The tool is called CRISPR. It lets scientists rearrange the building blocks of life, removing one gene, adding another, manipulating DNA with unprecedented ease and precision. And the CRISPR excitement is building around the world.
Meeting in Rome, and there was a presentation, and the guy just knocked our socks off. It was just, all of a sudden you're just sitting there and going, oh my goodness, what I could do with that. So I'd like to show you my lab.
What Elizabeth Simpson is trying to do is cure genetic blindness in children. And to do that, the Vancouver geneticist has built the gene mutation into mice.
So that is a sign of...
The mice have been engineered to develop the same disease as a child with the same genetic mutation.
Okay. So that's a normal.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what a normal mouse eye would look like. All right, so if I put her back and I see if I can find her sister that has a mutation. Okay, so here we go. So you can see right away that the eye itself is quite a bit smaller. And if we get a really good close-up shot, you'll actually be able to start seeing in the light that there's a whiteness over some of the eyes, particularly on this right eye here.
So is that mouse blind?
It's not completely blind, but it's much closer. It's very vision reduced. And our hope is that by correcting the genetic defect that these mice are born with, that we can actually restore the normal eye shape and function.
If they can reverse the blindness in the mouse, in theory they should be able to do the same thing in a child. So far, it's worked. In the mouse, that is.
We restored vision in a mouse model of blindness, and we are thrilled. And that is a really good example. We hope that that will make its way to children with those kinds of blindness.
And she believes CRISPR will help her make it happen.
Science is like this. It doesn't go smoothly, it jumps. And this is a jump, this is a game-changing jump.
Although humans have been manipulating DNA for decades, the older systems are cumbersome and inaccurate. A few years ago, scientists borrowed a tool from bacteria. They called it CRISPR. Like a pair of genetic scissors, it can be used to rearrange the DNA of any organism on the planet.
And to me, if somebody does get the Nobel Prize, it's the person who went, aha, this isn't just interesting in the original organism. This is a tool. I could use this. That's amazing, absolutely amazing.
How important is CRISPR? I think it's the most important thing I've ever encountered in my scientific and clinical career.
At Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto, Dr. Ronald Cohn believes CRISPR might hold the key to repairing genetic diseases.
So then there's a good chance that we see a duplication. I became mesmerized by this technology and by the potential options. I pulled my lab together. Very exciting. Okay. That was now almost 2 years ago when I changed completely the direction of what my lab has been focusing on.
So CRISPR changed your research completely?
Completely.
Right now, Dr. Cohn and his research team are working with the cells of a 13-year-old boy named Gabriel. He has Duchenne muscular dystrophy, a genetic mutation that has already cost him the use of his legs and will eventually leave him unable to move. So far, Dr. Cohn has used CRISPR to fix the genetic mutation in Gabriel's cells in a petri dish.
So it's a very personal, scientific endeavor for me. And when you think about the fact that we have now been able, after I've known this boy for 8 years, to correct his genetic duplication, provide full-length dystrophin in his muscle cells in my petri dish, and I'm now in a position to move the science forward to actually create potentially a medication that could help him one day. There cannot be anything more powerful to a scientist or a physician to begin tackling these problems.
The challenges are daunting. The researchers will have to figure out how to deliver CRISPR safely in a way that will get into Gabriel's cells and correct the genetic mistake in the living boy, and the potential risks are enormous.
As exciting as it is, I think that we all need to put the brakes on for ourselves to make sure that we don't move ahead of ourselves.
How fast should science be allowed to move? Now that researchers have the technical ability to alter the genetic material of any plant or animal with ease and precision, a development that's both thrilling and unsettling, partly because CRISPR is cheap and easy for anybody with basic training in microbiology.
I'm concerned about people who will hear about this technology, who have the financial means to tell the company said, can you please create a CRISPR drug and make me more muscle, make me smarter, make my eyes green. Eventually it's all going to be technically feasible. And I think that's why we need to put a bit of a framework here in place so this doesn't get out of control.
Already, CRISPR has been used to genetically alter human embryos. In April, a Chinese team reported on their effort to use CRISPR to edit a gene for a genetic blood disease. It's a move that alarmed many in the scientific community. And it added new urgency to an unprecedented summit of scientists from around the world.
For what conditions?
For 3 days in Washington, scientists, philosophers, and patients wrestled with the new reality.
Yes, as someone who has started to decipher the CRISPR-Cas9 mechanism, I feel very much concerned of the future usage of this technology.
I'm the mother of a child who died because of a fatal birth defect. He was 6 days old, and he suffered every day. If you have the skills and the knowledge to fix these diseases, then freaking do it.
But in the end, the scientists said, not yet. It's too soon to edit the genome in a way that could be passed on to future generations. Back in Niagara-on-the-Lake, Vicki Poirier considered the same question.
And what would you say to scientists as they're struggling with making these decisions?
Take it slow and steady. That's about it.
What about her grandchildren? Do they have the Huntington's mutation? No one knows. Tam approaches that risk as both a mother and a scientist.
For my kids, all I can do is just hope that by the time they're affected by that we will have a treatment, and I'm working hard to make sure that happens. If gene editing turns out to be the solution for Huntington's disease, of course, we want to be able to use it for that. How do you balance, putting the brakes on research that can have huge ethical implications and huge safety considerations? How do you balance that with the desperation of we just need a therapy? But don't stop working on the other stuff that might get there quicker.
Although the conversation is just getting started, CRISPR is already out of the box. Scientists are already using it to build unprecedented possibility and at the same time, uncertain risk. Kelly Crow, CBC News, Toronto.
I tried so hard and got so